So that's it. We're up to the questions and answers. So just a reminder that we're audio recording the session. So if you ask a question, it will be audio recorded. We'll post the recording on the RISE website. So we'll post the presentation. So folks that just want to see that can see it, but we're also going to post the audio recording. And just a reminder, today is not a day for policy questions. You should direct those to the ministry. Today's a day for very pragmatic discussions about issues that will help you get to the full application deadline. So we'll open it up for questions. Carrie's going to let me know whether there are questions coming in through the chat box. Any questions from folks in the room? Yep, Ivy.
Hi, it's Ivy here from North York. I had a question about the population health management piece, specifically if perhaps Rob could speak to experiences in, so they just released yesterday, we had a webinar about the network structure or the network attribution model in terms of population. And obviously there are some concerns, I think, particularly for folks in urban centers where your population is actually not that geographically aligned, and therefore you'll end up reaching patients who do not live sort of anywhere near where many of the services are. And so would be interested in whether or not, for example, in the US or in other systems, they sort of overcome this, and particularly in our area, concerns around alignment with home and community care and other services which seem to need to be geographically aligned, and how we manage that. Thanks.
Do you want to come up because people can see, if otherwise you'll be a disembodied voice. Well, you know even more about it.
Okay. About population health management, it's important to know your population. That's the first principle, is you actually have to know the population. But we are defining populations based on attributed populations, and there's lots of experience in the world around population-based management using attributed populations. So we will be coming up with more materials later about actually how you might think about an attributed population in the application of population health management. But I think, from the website, from the seminar yesterday, I think it gave you some clues as to where you might start in terms of thinking through how to manage populations. And remember, it's a journey. So you want to start with particular populations, and you move further and further afield that might be less tethered to your local environment. John, is there anything else that you want to say on this one?
Well, I guess so. Two things that I learned yesterday, because I was listening to the webinar, trying to figure out what would I tell the teams that we're interacting with and that we hope to interact with in future. And the first aha for me was that they needed to look at what they had originally considered as their geographic area of responsibility, and then they need to look at the map that's going to come from the ministry that shows what that referral and utilization network looks like. And then they need to think about, okay, what are we going to do about this? Now, in the case of a particular community like Hamilton, they might say, you know what? For 10 reasons, we're going to stay focused on the geographic city of Hamilton. We have a municipal partner that has many policy levers, other things, variety of things. But they might also reasonably say, wow, there's the map shows this kind of pattern of people coming to us from this community. Maybe we need to invite some other partners to the table that will allow us to effectively reach that need. And over time, we'll figure out how do we juggle the fact that we have control over some things for the city, but we don't have control over others. So that's observation one. The original map to what the map comes in from the ministry in the coming days or weeks. And my understanding is everybody will get them between the 19th and the 30th of August. Second observation is, as Therese said yesterday, 82% of patients can be attributed based on being part of a rostered primary care population. So what I took away from that is that's where I would focus all of my energy. I would just say, for whatever community we've defined, I'm going to throw all my effort around the rostered primary care population. And that's going to get me 82% of the people. And if I've picked the right metrics where people are really having trouble and want to move, then that would be the group I'd work with. 82% of them are going to be captured that way. They're a defined group. We know who they are. We know who their providers are. And what we need to focus on is building trusted relationships with those primary care providers so they'll become part of the team and work with us on population health management. In future, I'll worry about the other 18%. I'll iteratively get there somehow. But when I'm focused on low-hanging fruit, I would focus on the rostered population.
John, that makes entire sense to me, because we want to make this as practical and simple, as straightforward as we can for OHTs, and it's developing around trusted relationships that you need to create and actually going forward with that. So I absolutely agree with you, John. I just wanted to anchor around why attributed populations are actually important, just to kind of anchor in some of the concepts of it. Remember that attributed populations are attributed based on historical patterns of care. That means that patients and providers have actually met each other, and they've actually many times developed trusting relationships over time. We're respecting those trusting relationships between patients and providers, and we're trusting those relationships between different types of physicians and specialists and hospitals and so forth. So that's an important concept to have, is that we're reflecting those relationships that are already in place that actually provide some trust in the system to start with. And that's one of the reasons why attributed populations I think that is actually a good place to start, because of that basis.
Other questions, comments? And right now, it feels like we're the ones answering questions. In future, what we're going to be hearing more about is, here's how we're doing it at South Lake. What do you guys think about this? Would this work for you in other communities? So if folks have any reactions to the attributed population question, things to add on top of what Rob and I have said, we're very happy to hear them. We're actively noodling this through in conversations. Anything else on that point? Okay. Carrie, any questions online that folks have? No? So folks, we still have a few more minutes, 10 more minutes at maximum, but it's a good chance to get conversations going about things that you're struggling with. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious about the population segmentation.
Yeah.
I know that there are tons of international different approaches people have taken to segmenting their populations. Do you have any advice to us as we're thinking that through?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of different ways to segment and cross and split and carve out populations that you may. A couple things that make sense to me in doing this and having done this over many years. One is to try to segment populations that have similar needs. Okay, so that's the first principle, to try to understand what the populations are that have similar needs, segment in us. And then really try to segment them across the entirety of their care experience, not just one disease or another disease. It really is, rather than it's around patients with, it's not just about diabetes, it's about patients with diabetes and all of their other concerns that come with it, be it mental health issues or so forth. So it really is taking a person-centered approach to population segmentation, but really making sure that we're actually focusing on needs. This is a complex science around population segmentation. There are lots of different approaches that have validity, but that's my initial reaction around actually how you would do this.
Any other questions or comments before we wrap up? Yep, Carrie.
So we have one that came in around speaking to that idea about trust that, John, you spoke to earlier, and it came up around ways or suggestions that you might have to build trust with primary care providers.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're, with the three of us co-leading RISE, are all failed primary care physicians, so we're probably the last people who should be giving advice on that front. I think I've just put back the slide about the two very exciting primary care leadership initiatives happening, and so I think those two initiatives offer tremendous promise. But I think it's going to take, a ton of face-to-face interaction time. Rob, as I mentioned before, I've described to me going out and speaking to a group of 20 docs. I think it's going to be group by group by group and hearing what their concerns are and explaining, you know, what the benefits might be and how they can play a role in shaping it so that it does meet their needs. I think it's going to be, you know, a ground effort to really reach out to people and understand where their concerns have been in the past about how they've been treated, what their aspirations are for the future. But I think we have a lot of associations in this province that are very, very well equipped to work in partnership with in order to reach those people. And I have this long list of acronyms here of organizations that are very committed to do this. So we've had a lot of interaction with them. When we were writing the RISE brief, we got their feedback. We'll continue to listen to them for advice about how to do this. So beyond what I've said already about its importance and the fact that it's going to be a long, very person-to-person, small group set of interactions, and that there are great resources out there. I don't know that there's anything else I can add, but we do have a lot of people in this province that are actively thinking about how to support those conversations to happen and how to help build the trust over time.
Yeah, John is entirely right. Trust, and you know, I think Walter also said this the other day about the soft side of implementation. That this is a critical feature, is to build trust among the providers and the groups that maybe haven't had trusting relationships in the past. So this is actually critical. And part of it, John, the only thing I would add to it is when we think about the quadruple aim, don't forget about the fourth one, about provider experience. We want to simplify their life, make it easier, understand their problems, and listen. That's how we're actually going to be resolving trust. And we've got to actually demonstrate that we can actually improve that work experience. You know, provider burnout is a real problem in our province, and this is part of what we can do to address it. So I would implore you, as you're thinking through this, to not forget about that fourth aim.
Okay, last call before we wind up the webinar. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you again to Sick Kids for hosting us. Very good of you to do this. Hopefully we'll have a lot more people next time we roll around to downtown Toronto. We know this was very limited notice and it's peak holiday time, but we're grateful for those who've joined. We have a lot of folks signed up for the upcoming regional sessions. Just a reminder about our website. Please take a look at it, and if you have advice for us about how we can better meet the needs of teams, just let us know. So thank you very much. Carrie, you'll sign off on the webinar? Great. Thanks, everybody.